Hello and welcome to another edition of the Low Code Cafe. This is episode number 110 for September 21, 2022. Today we're going to talk about Google Analytics GA4, and so we'll be digging into that in a little bit, but this is a technical topic that came as a request through our community. So we hope to be able to answer the community question, but also just help in the larger sense, those of you that want to integrate with Google Analytics. Before we get into that, let me introduce myself. I'm Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantain App. With me today, Patrick Anderson. He's doing note-taking duties. Let me introduce the webinar. This is something that we do this same hour every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Central Time. It's a community webinar. It tends to go towards the technical side, talking about low code in general and Plantain App in specific. We would love to host you if you have a solution that you would like to demonstrate that might be of value to our community. Let us know. We record all these episodes. There's 109 hours of very good training content out on youtube.com/PlantainApp. So you can, we encourage you to go to there. You can use the link that you'll get a little bit, or you can scan the QR code there, but go subscribe and you'll be notified as we post new content to this and our other webinars. Today, pretty simple agenda. It's going to be me for the full hour. We'll do a little bit of from the trenches of support and then show this low-code hands-on development working with GA4. Please engage with us. There's a chat box. There's a question and answer. You can raise your hand if you want to talk. And after it's all over with, there's a feedback form, and we'd love to get your feedback. With that, we'll roll right on into From the Trenches and talk about hotfixes. There is one hotfix that got released to both version 121 and our new version 122. So depending on which version you're running, you'll see that. This is, we discovered a mistake that we made in our form builder where we included Bootstrap 5 unintentionally into the load. So the result is probably cosmetic and could make your pages look odd. But as a reminder, our intention is to not load Bootstrap 5 and leave that to be the responsibility of the theme. So this hotfix removes that, and then that removes conflicts. And so that's our one hotfix. We put it as recommended because it could impact all of our users, but again, it's probably cosmetic for you. So this week I ran into a couple of things that reminded me that forms and listings can act differently in edit mode. And as a matter of fact, I spent 15 minutes today trying to get ready for help with an issue, and ran into an issue that just kind of got me stuck. And so I thought I would mention it to keep you from getting stuck. The issue is that certain features of our both forms and listings can act differently depending on whether or not you're in edit mode on the page. So I'll demonstrate that real quickly, and also this, I guess, is a little bit of a teaser for Low Code Campfire. This is going to be a new contribution to Low Code Campfire this week, the ability to do some filtering, some dynamic filtering. So we have, for example, a listing. Let's see, I'm going to clear out my filters. We have a listing of items that we might want to pick from in different colors and different sizes. And so we have a choice of red or white, we have a choice of sizes, but once we pick a size, for example, if we pick a large size, you can see from the list that we only have that in white. So when we click the large, not only does it filter it down to that, but then it filters this other box. It no longer shows red, it only shows white. So this was as a request from the community, someone wanting to have these filter boxes be very dynamic. So for example, again, if we start with red, it narrows down the sizes to only the sizes that are available in red. So again, this is going to be made as a contribution to Campfire, and we'll probably go into it a little bit more in depth, what it took to put it together. And then I'll just mention this is important. If you need to use a filtering form, our new Bootstrap 5 has filtering that's built in that works quite similarly, not exactly the same, but for example, if you pick red, then the sizes automatically select. So there's if you want to go beyond the filtering that we provide by default, then you can use this technique. Anyway, so going back to my problem of the day, I was in edit mode on a page. I wanted to turn off the listing. I just didn't want it to appear at all. And so I went into products and settings. This is the listing name is products. And I just put false. I don't want this to show at all. And I saved it and refreshed. And yet it was still there. And so I spent 15 minutes trying to figure out if our product was broken. Nope, it was that I forgot what I was doing. When it's in edit mode, it always shows up for the editor. But when you go into normal page mode, it obeys that setting. So just a reminder that there is that feature of paying attention to edit mode, and I'm going to put this back the way it belongs so this demonstration will work. But it's little things like that will lose you 15 minutes. Okay, so that's that demonstration. I'll close that out. So that's a little tip from the trenches today. So I mentioned Campfire. That happened Friday this same hour, and the link for that will be again on what I post on the chat here in just a second. But this is a more interactive event that we do. It's in a meeting format, so everyone gets a chance to talk, ask questions, and help out your fellow low coders. So here they are, the links that I promised for this episode. And so those should all be on the clipboard. So you have the ability to register in advance for low code Campfire. You can get to our webinar recordings. You can get to the community portal, which has a lot of good help from our members and from our staff as well. And there's also the ability there now to sign up for live help if you want to get into our office hours. We'll give you hands-on help for several different hours during each week, and you can give us feedback. Then the rest of the links are the things that I'm going to be clicking in on and working on today. So here we go. And yeah, we have, Jerry reminds us that sometimes being logged in as a super user will change things as well, just as compared to being in page edit mode. So yep, it's just a good idea to realize that sometimes you're going to want to look at the applications that you're building as a regular old user with no permissions or the permissions that you expect, and then you expect the users to have, and make sure it works in that mode as well. So good development tip there. So let's get on with hands-on low coding. The topic of the day is Google Analytics GA4. So GA4, what is GA4? I didn't realize this till I got into this topic, but Google Analytics quite some time ago announced that they're retiring the old Universal Analytics. And so coming up on July 1, it's going to stop bringing in more data into the old product and you're only going to be able to use GA4. So it's a new thing, and it's got better privacy controls, but it's also I'm sure for protecting user privacy, but also there's more integrations that you can do, so you can notify Google of events through by raising them, and so it's probably worth your investigation if you're not already into it. So with that, that's GA4, and we want to be able to retrieve information out of analytics. That's our whole goal today, integrate with it and get some information out of it. When you start into that topic of integrating with it and you look at authentication, there is a ton of information, and it's hard to figure out what's actionable, exactly how to go about doing it, and especially I mean, because depending on your skill level, you breeze through it. For my skill level, it took a little bit of time. So that's what we're going to do today, is work through authentication. That's the biggest piece of what we're going to solve, because the calling it, once you have the bearer token that you need to do REST API calls, you can do those quite easily with Plant an App and the server request. So we'll be looking at that. And then I also want to talk a little bit about the GA4 Query Explorer, because that'll help you retrieve help you to figure out how to ask GA4 for your what you're trying to retrieve. But we'll get to that part in a minute. Let's just start by going to the end. What's this look like when we succeed? If you go into Google Analytics, you might have a web page that looks like this. We're monitoring a site called mbitx.com, and it's showing that we have 11 users. This is users by country, so some in the United States, some in Canada, some in India. And so we're looking at our dashboard and we see this. This is a nice interactive way to take a look at this information. Using Plant an App, what does that look like? If we go into developed a query, an API query form. I've got a body of a query that I'm going to ask Google about. I'm going to send the request, and I get a response back from Google. And so we see this active users, and we could parse through this JSON. I'm not even going to spend much time on it today, other than to show you that it's there. But it's showing that you can read it pretty well. That there's 11 users in the United States. There's 3 users from Canada. There's 1 user from India. So the same, and there's a total, 3 row count, 3 rows returned in the data. So the same kind of information that was available here is available to look at in as a response in JSON, and you can do anything you want with it. So anything you can get out of Google through this REST API, you can now programmatically put into your application. Great. So let's see what's behind that. Let's take a look at the low code that I use to retrieve data from GA4. Again, we're putting security off for a second and just talking about what we get out of this and how to do it. So we have to have a bearer token. That's the security thing from Google. We got to consume that bearer token somehow. We're going to make an API call to get data from Google, and then we're going to show the result on the screen. So let's take a look at my low code. We didn't talk about it, but down here I've displayed it. And typically you wouldn't display it, but I've displayed, this is what the bearer token looks like from Google. And so this is the thing that's needed to get through Google's, to get Google to respond to a request. If I dive in and look at the form behind this, it's got a few parts. The first part is that I'm doing a server request to get this token. Now, the solution that we're going to talk about in a little while, the way that I solve this security issue is that it's something that's going on a scheduled task on my server, and it's generating a security token for me every 30 minutes. So all I'm doing here is using a server request to grab it and bring it in so that I can use it. So I'm not solving the security problem here. I'm just using the answer. So I grab the answer. It goes into something called, into a token called Google code. And I do this every time the form goes through initialization. So I have Google code. I put it into a token called authorization and put the word bearer in front of it. So on the screen, we have an authorization text box, and that's what you're seeing. So when you see this form initialize and it has bearer or whatever here, it's just grabbing it from a file that's on the file system. So it's not, it's grabbing it and not doing the security, but it is the piece that's needed to query Google. So now that we have a bearer token, how do we use it? Well, we have made a field where a large text field where you can put in a query, and I've been given an initial value of this generic give me all active users by country for the state range, but we could put anything in there, and that would be in this thing called body. We're going to put the result into something called response, and all the work is done by this send request. Pretty simple work here in low code. We do a server request, so everything happens in this action, and then the update form Ajax button just says keep on this page, update the fields, and keep on this page. So the server request is calling the URL at Google. The analytics data, Google API is whatever. This is my property ID from Google, so you'll need this would vary for you versus me, but we're going to run a report. The documentation tells us this needs to be in a post format. We're passing the body, whatever it is that's coming in on our form, and then we have some special headers, and this is the main one here. We have an authorization header. This is required by Google, and we're passing the authorization field. That's going to have the value of bearer and plus whatever that magic string is, and that's going to tell Google it's okay to talk to us. From an output perspective, we're putting it into response. That's the same name as the field that we defined up above. So the button is pretty simple. Take the information that's on the screen and pass it to Google and get a response. And works pretty simply. So there's that. So that's how we consume it. I mentioned the GA4 Query Explorer, so that's kind of cool. When you're trying to figure out how to ask Google for things, you can open up this Query Explorer, and this is already opened to its working with, it knows who I am, right? I've already gone through authorization here, so it knows the account and the property that we want that we're querying against. And so we can give it a date range, we can give it some metrics that we want to do. So let's say instead of what the active users that we're doing before, let's say we wanted to look at session duration, and we want to look at the full page URL. So it gives us the suggestions on what we can do for our metrics and our dimensions, and we'll do total aggregation on it as well. What's going on as we do this, we can make this request interactively. So we've got a make request button. It goes away and thinks about it, and now it shows us all of our pages that are active on the site and their session duration time. Well, this cool checkbox here, show request JSON, shows the all the selections that you've made above are built into a JSON ready to go. So if we were to copy this, we can now go to Google API query form. And again, for you, just to set perspective, you're probably not going to have a Google API query form. This is just a nice development tool, a workbench thing. But whatever it is that you're targeting in Google, you can use either GA4 Query Explorer to build your query, or you can build it according to the documentation, whatever's convenient for you. But this is what's going to go into the body of your request. Anyway, so we've built one interactively. We send the request. It's a different request. We get a different answer. So we can see our dimensions or full page URL. We can see that the Google Analytics page has gotten its session length average value is 823, and that's coincidentally the same value that is being returned here in this interactive tool. So you can use their interactive tool to come up with some JSON and then plug it into your application. If we change this, and let's say instead of average duration, we want use per session. And maybe instead of URL, we want to target an ad source. Doesn't matter. I don't have any ad sources, but we'll still get screen page views per session. So now the JSON has changed, and if we make the request here, we can see the answer is 4.24. Plug that same JSON in here, and you see the same answer here. So you can use GA4 Query Explorer to figure out what you want and manipulate your query, and then you can just use the body. So that's a cool tool. Okay. So that's all on the consuming side. So now let's see if we can figure out how to get past security. Just to remind you that what we've been looking at so far is relying on that bearer token that we already automatically built on the file server, and I haven't showed you how to build it. And that's what we're going to do. Now we're going to talk about tools and techniques that made that bearer token available. So I'm going to close a couple of things down here just so I don't get confused. It might happen anyway. The place that I started is the API Quickstart. And this is this is a link that I put on the chat, and it will also be in the recording notes when it's posted up on YouTube. But this is a command line tool that you can execute commands, GCloud commands. So it requires that you enable it, and so we'll enable it and pick a name of a product. We'll assign a project name. So I'm going to call this the Café 110 project and say next. This is going to create the project for me, and let's see, it asks where are you calling it from, and they tell us in the documentation to choose desktop app. So I'll do that, and that's listed right here in the stuff that's hidden behind the window, right? So then it gives us some a configuration file, and I'm going to download that so that we'll be able to use it, and I'll get into it here in just a second, and I'll say done. Yep, it says choose desktop when you ask where you're calling from. Anyway, this gives us some credentials, and that's what we want. So I'm going to get this opened up and get them on the clipboard. So got those. And then if we go on to step 2, it says you're going to need to install and initialize the Cloud SDK. And so you go into GCloud here and download and install the Cloud SDK. Now, I've already done that on my server. I'm going to jump to my server now. And but you would just go to your server, go to that same link, download it, install it. I've installed it on a couple of machines. One, it ran a really long time, maybe 30 minutes or so. It might have been might need to turn your antivirus off to speed it up, or you can just patiently wait for it, but it does install, and it's a pretty straightforward installer. I've done a file here, and this is, I've just created a file called Credentials.json, and I've dropped my, I will put my credentials in here. I'll do this live here and hope it works. We've got so it's this Café 110 project. That's what we authorized that we created a little while ago. And so we're going to save that into our credentials file. Sorry for clicking around, but I got to show you next step in the process here. So we created Credentials.json, we've installed the Google Cloud SDK, and then there's this command, GCloud init. And this is the thing that works your way through security on there. And again, I apologize when I get into this. I can't show it to you from the start because I've already installed it on the server, and so you won't see exactly the same dialogue, but you're going to be able to work your way through it. One of the things that I ran into in the first place, when the first time that I did this, is you'll see an error, you get an error message when you run this GCloud init that says callers must accept the terms of service. And there was some, it seemed like a chicken and the egg kind of thing, that just doing the API and not going into it through the interactive, you avoided the terms of service, and Google was not happy with that. So you got to go to your Cloud console and find your project or create a new project and accept the terms of service interactively on screen in order for that to work. So if you run into that error, I just wanted to point out the potential solution. So we're going to do GCloud init. So back to my server, and Google Cloud will create this Google Cloud SDK shell link. And so we'll do that GCloud init. First time, it's a very old command line type interface. And so I think the only one that you're going to be presented with the first time is create a new configuration. But the dialog after runs very similar to that. I'm going to use the reinitialize a configuration, but it's you just do a new configuration, and it asks you how you're going to log in. You won't have any login first time, so you'll only have the login with a new account option. I've already got mine set up, but I'm going to say log in with a new account anyway, so you can see what happens. So it launches a browser. And you pick something to log in. I'm going to log in with my old email address. And this is where you get the permissions dialog. Google Cloud SDK wants access to your account. Do we trust them? Yep, we do. So we say yes. And it says you're now authenticated. And now this command line has moved on to the next piece of the puzzle. It's now asking you about a project because it knows that it's opened a browser, you've authorized it, it knows who you are now. It says you're logged in as this person. So then you would need to, your first time you're not going to have any projects listed, we're going to need the project ID. So let me go back to interactive here and find my Cloud console. I think this is where it is. And sign in as the right user. And find my See, I was worried about this. Finding the right piece of information. You need your project ID, and I think I'm gonna punt here just so I don't get stuck. You need your project ID. Tell you what, I am just going to create a new project. Maybe we can make it look like this. So this is going to be we'll go Café 110, and it's going to create it for us. Great. Okay. So if there's any confusion there, I apologize. Well, there is confusion there, but I suspect that as you work through this on a new system, you will be able to figure it out. It's confusing because I've done it like 4 or 5 times. All right, back to, we did GCloud init, and now the next step is that we have these credentials, credentials.json, and we have to use a command called GCloud auth application default login. We're going to use our credentials to do that, but that's the command that we need to use. And I've already again, this entire command is going to be in the notes for this episode, but it's this one, GCloud login. I've followed their recommendations to choose a scopes option, so we need to be the ability to read analytics, and then I'm also pointing it to a user file, and so this is the same file that's right here on the file system, Credentials.json. So I am going to just grab that and process this command. Again, the form of this command is going to be in the notes of this episode, I guess. In case anybody wants that, I'll put it here now so that you don't have to wait for the episode to come out, Jerry. So I'll let that run, and when it runs, it again asks you, are you okay with this? Who are you? So I'm going to sign in as Dale Warner. Depending on how it was created, you might have to say that it's an unsafe account, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to accept it, and it's going to give us access to the CLI. So it's now what we've accomplished is that Google Cloud SDK shell knows some permissions. It knows how to act, that you're allowed to act. And so now we can run other commands, and we don't have to provide authentication. It's been done through the browser. Okay, so there's now that we've got that authorization taken care of, there's this command line that will generate a bearer token, and you can run this interactively. And so I'm just going to clear my screen here and paste it in. When you run it interactively, if it succeeds, you're going to get a bearer token. You see it begins with this YA29, whatever. So interactively, we now can get a bearer token. And the next step is we want to do that we want to send it to a file in the file system. So we're going to set up a batch file to generate a token and send it to a file in a known location. And I have an example of that right here. So I've got a batch file called getToken.bat. It runs that application, and it uses this old DOS piping to send it where I want it to go. So I am going to, every time this runs, it's going to create a bearer.txt file. And I'm going to open up that spot on my file system. Notice it's in the file system of my portal. Just to prove that it works, I'm going to delete this out and run my batch file. And the result of it, then it creates a bearer text, and it's got this value. So we've provided this bat file. Anytime we run it, we can get a new bearer token. So now it's just down to using Task Scheduler to run that thing on a schedule. I think these last an hour. I've set mine to run every half hour. So I've got a trigger that runs, come on, that repeats every 30 minutes. And it's going to run up at least till tomorrow. I'm not going to leave this security hole open forever. You guys know where my bearer token is. And it just runs this getToken.bat file. So every time that runs, we get a new token. Bing, bang, bang. So we went through the authorization steps. We did a command line. We created a batch file that uses that command line to generate the bearer token. We put it out onto the file system, and I've chosen to use Task Scheduler to run it periodically. but I suspect somebody who knows how to run PowerShell could get that to run, get that patch file to run only when, for example, you need a new bearer token. And so now, the last step is let's build a low-code app to retrieve that bearer token. And we've already done that. That's what happens here when we, I'm going to go full circle here. When we go to, this is the bearer token. If we were to take a look at this,
just to clarify, Dale. Okay, so you're overwriting the existing file when you run that
every time.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So the file name doesn't change. Okay.
Right. So if we take a look, the bearer token that's in that file is the same one that we see on the screen. It comes from this on init action that goes out and just retrieves it from that same location on the file system. I put it in a token, but we could just specify it here directly. And it grabs it from there and populates it into the form. So
now, when you were getting your credentials, you created a new project. Does that mean that this bearer token that you have now is not going to work with, or am I misunderstanding it?
Yeah, I did gloss over that spot, didn't I? You need a project, and the project has to be configured in Google. But yeah, this bearer token that we have works.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, the authorization that we provided took it there. So I don't know. We've proved our case. We've done it a little bit early here. If you read through the documentation, there are other ways to access this. You can do it the command line version. If you using GCloud command line version. If you want to install their program on your server and use it, it seems to work well and reliably. There's others, if you want to use, they provide libraries for other things like JavaScript and Ruby and different mechanisms, and so there's certainly other ways to go about it. There's also other authentication methods that they support, but it's a little bit of a maze to get through, and so at least this is one way through the maze. Cool. So this could be a great time if you had any questions, or Jerry particularly, you asked about how to do this. So if I skipped anything that you don't think you're going to be able to find your way through, that would be a great time to ask. Oh yeah, I need to give Jerry Jerry, I will private messenger to you my PayPal account, because he's $100 million. Let me get that right to you. Cool. Hopefully that will solve the problem if you want to do that. And then, now it comes down to what all can you get out of Google Analytics. I think I had a link here someplace for the API documentation. And this was the API Quickstart, but I suspect there is a ton of here it is here. So all the different things that you can retrieve out of it, and so hopefully the thing that Jerry was trying to do, which was retrieving information about videos, will be part of the information that GA4 returns. And so Jim asks, do we have Zoom chat copy turned off on purpose? You can't copy the links. So I've been doing this for all this time, and I didn't know that that's an option that we were preventing you from doing. Let's see if I can. So Jim, not intentionally. Yeah, sometimes, good question. Is it a new Zoom feature? Sometimes they add features for us. So I'll have to go look and see if there's a feature within the meeting that sets that. I apologize. So anybody who needs that, I'll have it available for you on Friday at the Campfire. By that time, all these links should be in the recording. Mihai usually gets those up within the next day after we do this. So you have a couple of different places to do it, but we'll have those for you. Cool. And Jerry said you can use GA4 to create personal events. Then you can go get it via the query. We have an event that reads the video % used per user and stores it. So now I can go get it. Yeah, that was, if going back to, what is GA4 in the start here. If you get into the explanation, it says that among the things you can do is have these direct integrations that you can post things and whether in Jerry's case, it's about retrieving the percentage of video that's done. And in a more typical sales scenario, it's as people pass certain markers in your website, they've done the things that indicate that you're moving them towards monetization, or you've actually monetized your site. You can raise these events, whatever you want, and then be able to report on them. So thank you for reminding me about why I don't see anything about videos in here. It's a custom thing. So cool. All right. So with that, I'm going to take any last questions. And other than that, we will call it done for today.
I think this it may be obvious, but I just think it's worth asking and clarifying is that in the past we've done some demonstrations where you get bearer tokens via an API. So you use an API, you have a secret key or something like that. You have credentials that you pass via an API that then gives you back the bearer token. Then you use that bearer token for the API call to get back the data that you need. And just this is a more complex and I'm sure more secure than that. But that option is not available in this case. Correct.
We haven't been able to find it. Jerry tried diligently, and I did as well. Google really wants you to go through that dialogue. Jerry, that's the problem. Google wants you to go through that interactive dialogue on your browser, and where they feel like it's very secure. It's an OAuth 2 thing. You're right. Different. It would be great, and I think there may even be some other lower security answers. If you read what they've provided, there is some support for, hey, you've got a secret key, and you can use that to retrieve. But it also kind of it may presume that you're going to use their libraries with that, and so there's this extra layer of how do I in that scenario you talked about, a lot of people that offer data offer it in a pretty straightforward way. You call it to get your bearer token, so you pass their security gate, and then from that point forward, you just use the bearer token to get it. These guys don't seem to provide it in that nice, simple fashion, so you have to go a couple extra steps. When you get into our own API endpoints, there's that same kind of thing where one of the options that you have is to provide to just set up a simple API key. Be easy, something easy for us to look at here. If I knew where my form was. So APIs, when we define a new API in our system, we have these security options down at the bottom. And for example, we allow one of the possibilities is to restrict it to API keys, meaning you can only you have to have a magic key to use it, and the keys are generated. If we cancel out here and look at security, you can create a new key. It generates a nice random number, and you can hand that to somebody. So this is just another way of dealing with it, kind of a trusted secret, and you'll see this pretty commonly on the web as well, where they want to make sure that not everybody is consuming their API, so you have a secret key. So yeah, everyone deals with it a little bit differently, and that I think it's been my experience. That's the fun of APIs, getting past their security, because once you do that, then it works. I found that to be true.
Yeah.
We've done. Go back and look at the different ones where we've dealt with APIs. They're each just a little bit different. Okay, great. So with that, I am going to move on and say happy low coding. Thank you all for attending today. We look forward to producing this for you again next week. So we will see you then. Please join us also on Friday. All right, enjoy.